Welcome to the American Diversity Report podcast, where we interview diverse innovators and wonderful change makers. I'm Deborah Levine, the editor of the ADR and your host. And with me today is Marty Martinez, who leads the Reach Out and Read network, which includes more than 6,000 program sites in all 50 states and nearly 30 regional, state, and local affiliates. Marty brings nearly 25 years of experience working on behalf of young people, families in underserved communities across the greater Boston area. He has developed a strong skill set and expertise in public health, nonprofit management, and positive youth development. Welcome, Marty.
Thanks for having me, Deborah. I appreciate it.
You've been busy.
You could say that. You could say that. Making good trouble. So that's what it's about.
There you go. How'd you get started in this good trouble?
Yeah, so I've been, working here in the community in the greater Boston area for many years, sort of working in public health, youth development, working for nonprofits and government, really focused on strengthening the communities that I live in, that I'm a part of, and been really determined to sort of connect the dots for what we can do to help families thrive, not just get by, but actually thrive. And so that's really been my career, and I've been doing that for about 25 years, and really connected to this work that I'm doing today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, and we know that it's much needed. About 1/3 of young children and half of children living in poverty in the United States arrive at kindergarten without skills they need to do well in school.
Yeah, it's really true, Deborah. I mean, I think for us at Reach Out and Read, our goal and our mission is to really ensure that all children have opportunities to read together with their parents, read aloud, bond over books and words and pictures and a page. And it's really twofold, right? It does help prepare children for kindergarten, right? When they're getting ready to learn and getting ready to make sure they learn to read so that they can eventually read to learn, which we know is an important component of it. But it's also about creating opportunities and moments for children and parents to bond. If folks listening have ever read to a child, that it's a little bit less about the words on the page and a little bit more about sitting together, connecting, doing that work. As someone who, I have a 5-year-old son, so I've been a lion, a bird, a shark, a dinosaur, a fire truck. I've been all those things while reading a book. And some of those things weren't even on the page, but they were in his mind and his stories that were connected to those pages. And so really for us, it's about making sure that children have the head start they need and that connection to their family. But we do it through the power and love of reading and books, which really does help children be prepared to learn and be ready for kindergarten. And unfortunately, many, many children are not ready when they walk into kindergarten. And so we're part of the puzzle to help them strengthen that opportunity overall.
And did your parents read to you?
Yeah, absolutely. My mother read to me. My mother also made sure that I read all the time. So she would buy me books and connect to stories. And so reading was both something I loved, but also something I had to do, which was an important part of it. So I appreciated it. And now I get to pass on some of that to my own son. One of the books I loved when I was a kid was Corduroy. If you've ever seen that book or read that book, I love that book in general. It's about bears, and it's just a really great story. And my son has it, and so it's nice to sort of see that connection point and that continued sort of attention to those kinds of stories. But yeah, so I had that personally, and I've been excited to pass that on to my own son.
Oh, I know what that's like. I read Peter Pan when I was about 3, right?
Nice. Wow.
And then I put books into my daughter's crib, which was still in diapers, just so she could kind of, look, even if it was just pictures, something about a book, right?
For sure, for
And
sure.
so
Yeah.
he became the only person I ever met who actually read in the shower. And I found the books on the bathroom floor, and I said, "What did you do?" She said, "I'm reading in the shower." I said, "How do you do that?" She said, "I read it when the shower's on my back and I need to turn around and throw it over, onto the floor." Okay, so I guess it was success.
You might have created too much of a passion for reading there, to be fair.
I love it. Well,
But I love that. I love that. And to be honest with you, that love of reading, it's born as a child, and then it continues to be watered and prospered and as adults. And so that's a really amazing story. I appreciate that.
you're welcome to share it.
Thank you.
And I understand that you have written a book.
So no, so the book
No?
actually that the book itself, Talk Baby Talk, which is a
Yeah.
really great book, right? It's not a book that I've actually written. It's a book that we as Reach Out and Read helped to produce
Okay.
and sort of work with the author, Trisha Walker, to create, right? And so for us, a book like this, Talk Baby Talk, is a really great. It's a board book for younger children. And it's really a book that connects sort of the stories in these pages, beautifully illustrated for caregivers with an infant and with a toddler. And so for us, there's diverse images, there's moms, there's dads, there's, abuelas, there's, caretakers and grandparents throughout. And it really is intended to create the imagery of a child and a parent talking, even if a child can't actually talk yet, right? The sounds and the voices and the power of that. And so for Reach Out and Read, we don't normally create books. What we do is we buy them. For example, last year, we bought 8 million books, children's books, and distributed them across the country. So we buy books, but we don't create them. But this is a book that was created by our local affiliate in the Northeast that oversees Massachusetts, Connecticut, upstate New York. And so in that work, one of the things we wanted to be able to do was add to the diversity of books, add to diverse representation of books. And so this is not something we normally do, but it's an exciting project that says if you don't have enough diversity, let's create it and let's make sure that we're doing what we can do to do that. So I just had the privilege recently of spending a little bit of time with Trisha, the author. We did a public reading at Frugal Bookstore, a community-based bookstore in Roxbury, in the heart of the Black community in Boston. And Trisha's a native of Roxbury, so I got to spend some time with her where she read the book out loud at a book reading there, and really just could feel the passion and commitment you put into a children's book. And she was able to voice why it's so important to have diverse representation for families. She told this really great story, Deborah, briefly, that I'll just mention, that she remembered being in a book reading and having all these diverse books at a book fair that she was at, and that she was a part of. And a little girl walked up and saw a book, and the book had a young Black child on the front of the book. And the girl said, "Oh, look at this book, a beautiful illustration." And her mom said to her, "Oh, that book's not for you. Let's look at these books over here." And Trisha, as the author, said she felt her heart sink a little bit and thought, no, these books aren't just for diverse folks or just for communities of color. We all need diverse representation, and to see that, especially children. And so, really, this is a project that we don't normally do by creating a book in partnership with an author and an illustrator. But we are eager and committed to creating more diverse representation in children's books. And this is one of many strategies that we're taking on.
Love it. I love it. Thank you. Much needed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And these conversations have to happen early in childhood. Yes?
Absolutely, no doubt. I mean, our program itself starts at birth,
Oh,
right? So we're starting at birth. Children through our model get roughly 14 books between 0 and 5, and they get it from their pediatrician or their doctor or their nurse practitioner, whoever's giving them the well child visit, gives them that book and integrates it as a developmental assessment tool throughout the visit with the child. And so, some will say, well, what is a 6-month-old going to do with the book, right? Well, I'll tell you, if you ever had a book and you give it to a baby, what does the baby do? If they have the dexterity with their hands at that point, they put it in their mouth. They might even hit themselves in the head with it. They might even, stare at it a little bit. But it's really not about the content of the book. It's really about the tool that is being used and created with the book. And as you
Yes.
said, putting books, giving books to your child early on in their crib, that is just creating a love of books and a love of sort of reading and letters and words. And so early on, we do that, not only to create that opportunity, but also to create the opportunity to bond. And for children with their families to bond early, that is so vitally important that bonding happens. It creates a lot of protection for that child, from a lot of the things that unfortunately many children have to experience.
Well, I'll share with you when I put a number of books into my baby's crib in the morning. One of the books called The Tawny Scrawny Lion, you know that
Okay.
one?
Okay, I've
Right?
heard of it.
She had torn it up into little teeny pieces, right?
Uh-huh.
And I go in, I look at her, and she just gives me this big grin, right? I don't, what did you do? Well, I thought it was a mistake, so I bought her a new one. I
Uh-huh.
took it into the crib that night, and the next morning, she'd torn it up into little teeny pieces. Years later, I asked a friend who was sort of a psychologist about this, and he said, it obviously meant something to her very special.
Yeah.
And so that's why she was smiling, that she had treated it specially.
Yeah,
Okay. So you never
absolutely.
quite know how they're going to respond,
Mhm.
but she she
It
later,
meant something.
it meant something to her,
Yeah.
and she later became a doctor dealing specifically with children,
Wow, that's really
right?
great. I
You
love
know,
that. I love that.
and I'm so glad you're doing what you do. It must really, help these young people and their families,
Hmm.
with the challenges that we're facing and the stress
Yeah.
that we all are feeling these days.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I think for us, we are an early literacy, early bonding program.
Okay.
And the reason I say it that way is because it really is what we're doing is we're trying to create sort of those moments that matter for children with their parents or their caregiver, if you will. And really, if you think about the development of children, our model helps to sort of strengthen that development and create opportunities to boost what are positive childhood experiences. We often hear about the adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, if for those folks who are really, tied into child development and healthy development. Those ACEs, which are the adverse childhood experiences that we don't want children to have, they can be directly countered by positive experiences, and positive experiences create sort of resiliency, and they create a more robust environment for children to develop and grow in. We're the only early literacy program that is endorsed by the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I share that because the folks who deliver our model are clinicians, right? We have over 36,000 trained clinicians across the country who spend the time to bring in the book, use it as a tool to support parents, to make that connection between my reading aloud is important, and to make the connection while it helps to create and strengthen the earliest of relationships that children have with their parents, and to create sort of that additional layer of support that parents may need and that families may need moving forward. I will say to you, I meet clinicians all across the country who talk about how they've heard from parents that these are the only books they have in their home. Unfortunately, and Deborah, you'll know this given what you know about books and literature, books are not cheap, to be fair. Children's books, diverse children's books, are actually more expensive when they have diverse representation and diverse for a variety variety of reasons. They're more expensive, and so lots of families will say, we don't have these kinds of books in our homes, and it's great to have these books. And our program helps to build a library for a child and for a family over that course of time, and it really can be the only way that access is created to diverse children's books, but also that sort of learning and education around reading is important. It's fundamental to our success. And again, remember, these children aren't school aged yet. So they haven't had a chance to experience that whole world in school. We want children to get there experiencing some of that before they enter kindergarten. I know it helped my son, and it helps many, many children to experience that before they get there.
Absolutely. And it must be have a psychological effect, so that they see the world with a broader picture. They don't respond with a knee-jerk reaction against people who are different from them, and resort to ugly responses.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. I mean, we use the framing that was not coined by us, but we use this framing of mirrors and windows as part of our books, right? We want children and families to see themselves reflected in the books and the stories that they see and what they're connected to. But we also want people to see books as windows into the world, right? Windows into the experiences that are around them, and that includes different people, right? And includes different places and different sort of stories. I'll tell you briefly, my son loves the book Jabari Jumps. And Jabari Jumps is a book that's about a young Black boy who is just learned how to swim, and he's with his dad, and he's trying to figure out if he can jump off the diving board. And the whole book is really connected to him, being afraid, but trying to get strength and courage from his dad, and his dad believing in him, etc. Jabari is a young Black boy, and all the illustrations are of a young Black family and community, and sort of that framing, and it's really tied into the experiences of like being brave as a little boy. My son, who's Black, identifies with the character. He identifies with Jabari. When he sees a boy who looks like him in a book, he says, "Oh, look, Papa, that he has my nose, or his hair's like mine, or oh, look at his skin's like mine. Oh, it's kind of like yours, Papa." And so those experiences then connect that story to him, but it also connects the messaging to him, right? So there's times when he'll use terminology to say, "I'm going to be brave," like Jabari, whether he's getting a shot at the doctors, or it's darker than he wants it to be in the room, etc. And so I think we miss the fact that diverse books, this is not a political correctness thing. This is really about ensuring that families and children can look at a book and see their life experiences reflected in that book, whatever that family might be, whatever those experiences are. And that's true not only for the diverse families, but then the windows part of the world around us. So that's really the framing, but you're absolutely right. It prepares us for the world that is very diverse, and it prepares us to see imagery that we then can hold on to and connect to.
Oh my goodness. I need to share with you that my mother, right, back in the 1940s, right, was a psychologist major at college. And she published an article in the 1940s on the impact of storytelling on children. Yeah. And it was, I didn't know that until I had grown up, and my father had kept all the papers, and I saw it. And I knew, though, that she had used all those skills on me. And it was not like I was aware of it. The kids are not really aware of the impact.
Right.
They absorb it, right? They become it. And that's what you're doing for them. And I so appreciate it. It is something that shapes minds, souls, and hearts. And then they go on, as you have, to do the same to the next generation.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's great. It's so great to hear that about your mom and think about how many years ago that is to be able to shape those pieces, right? I say it all the time. I learned history from stories on my mother's lap and my grandmother's lap. That's how I learned history in my family and in my community, and those stories made a huge difference and taught me a lot about the world I was going to go into and prepared me for it. So absolutely, I love that. That's a really powerful piece.
I'm looking forward to seeing how your son develops. I hope you'll stay in touch.
Me too. Me too. Me too. He's got a very charismatic personality. So I am too. I'm excited to see what he does.
I love it. I love it. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't covered yet?
Yeah, no, it's we love people to learn more about what we do and how we do it. People can go on to reachoutandread.org. It is our national website. Parents can go on and look and see if there are clinics in their own geography that implement our program. Again, we operate in every state in the United States with thousands and thousands of clinicians, and I'd love for people to go on and learn more about what we're trying to do to strengthen the world for children. That's really what we're trying to do.
Wonderful. Audience, you have ways to follow up on this and to bring a positive mindset and a diverse world to many people, young people, who will eventually be our leaders.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Marty.
Thanks, Deborah. Thanks for having me.